My name is David Alfini, and I am from StartOut, and we are just waiting for people to join us, so feel free to get comfortable. We'll start in a minute or two. But thank you so much for joining us tonight. Give it a minute or so, let people join in. And I guess we are a little bit all over the country right now that we are, so please, yeah, let us know where you're in the chat where people are coming in from, because now that we are national, when we're all working from home, we'd love to see where everybody's signing in from. Wonderful. We got people from Philadelphia, Chicago, Providence. This is wonderful. Great. So I want to be respectful of everyone's time so we can get started. Again, thank you so much for coming. This is our program from StartOut Chicago on the nuts and bolts of entrepreneurship. And for those of you who are new to StartOut or haven't been a part of a StartOut program before, StartOut is a national organization with the mission of increasing the number, diversity, and impact of the LGBTQ plus entrepreneur community. The goal of StartOut is to provide resources for entrepreneurs, the resources that entrepreneurs need to succeed, and promoting the success of our community. I've personally been involved with StartOut for about 5 years now, and I can say honestly that it's one of the best resources around for the entrepreneur or for anybody that's interested in business. And I think this panel tonight is going to be a great example of that. I would encourage everybody who hasn't done so already to go to the StartOut website, which is startout.org, and to register, become a member. It's totally free, and it will let you know what the different events are that are coming up. We do several events a year in Chicago, and the national organization has chapters in several other cities, and those chapters also do events regularly. So there's a lot of things going on for the entrepreneur community. One of the resources that we do offer are educational programs like this on a number of topics. And this one, I think, is going to be really impactful for everyone that's attending. This is, again, the nuts and bolts of being an entrepreneur. And what we wanted to sort of address is generally there's that period of time where an entrepreneur starts out with a great idea. And they're not sure what they're doing with it, but they've got this great idea. And then they work on bringing that idea to life in their free time and on their weekends. And then at a certain point, they take the plunge and they begin to formalize that idea into an actual startup entity. And our discussion today is going to focus on those considerations that arise at that point when it's actually beginning to form as an entity, as well as different considerations that may occur as the StartOut journey continues and the entity becomes bigger. So we chose a panel of 4 people that from different industries, different backgrounds, that we felt really could talk about that nuts and bolts of what it means to really bring that great idea into fruition. So joining me today are Lisa Hanlon, AJ Schumacher, Darren Rodgers, and Darien Marion-Burton. So Lisa Hanlon is the managing partner of the Deerfield, Illinois office of Marcum. Marcum is one of the largest independent accounting and advisory services in the country. It provides a full spectrum of traditional tax, accounting, and assurance services. Lisa herself is a certified public accountant, and she works with businesses of all sizes and all stages of growth. Lisa heads up the Midwest region's Modern Family Division, which caters to not only the LGBTQ community, but also anyone who sort of doesn't fit into that married with 2 children category. And Lisa's going to discuss with us tonight accounting and the financial planning needs of a startup company might have, and how those needs might change over time. And next, I have attorney AJ Schumacher. And AJ is a lawyer at the firm of Foley and Lardner. And Foley and Lardner is a wonderful firm. For those who don't know it, it is a huge supporter of the LGBTQ community and StartOut generally. And it's one of the sponsors of our program tonight. AJ practices in both Chicago and Milwaukee, and his practice focuses on advising clients as to intellectual property issues. And he's going to take us through some of the issues that a startup company might have going through with respect to bringing that idea to fruition again. And we also have Darren Rodgers, and Darren has decades of experience in the health insurance field, having been president of Blue Cross Blue Shield of Texas and a chief marketing officer for a Chicago-based healthcare services corporation, which operates Blue Cross Blue Shield plans in Illinois, Montana, New Mexico, Oklahoma, and Texas. Since retiring in 2018, Darren has served as advisor to several startup companies and organizations seeking to work with health insurance, work with health insurance companies. And I especially thank Darren for being here tonight because he is actually in Florida, and they're having some challenging weather, as we all know from the news. So we're very thankful that he's able to join us and that his internet has stayed on, and the weather is being kind to us. So thank you so much. And last but not least, we have Darien Marion-Burton. And Darien is the president of DM Burton. DM Burton is a social marketing firm focused on helping startups and businesses of all sizes scale through effective and efficient marketing strategies. Darren is also a member of the StartOut Chicago Programming Board, and he's going to discuss some of the important social media considerations that a startup should consider. So thank you all for being here tonight. That was a long introduction, but I wanted everybody to know all the different industries that we're covering tonight. So my first question, and I'm going to ask each of the panelists individually this question. And before I do that, actually, I wanted to say, if anybody has any questions for the panelists as we go through, please put it into the Q&A chat, or the Q&A function of the Zoom, and we will get to them at the end of the program. So my first question for the panelists is, I wanted to ask them a little bit more than I just went over for each of them about their field, and why their field and what they're doing is important for a startup entrepreneur, especially at the beginning of their startup journey. So, and let me start with Lisa. Lisa, I think we all have a basic sense of what accounting is. However, I would guess that a lot of people aren't aware of the different services that fall under the umbrella of accounting, especially at an organization like Marcum, where we see accounting in the name, but they do a ton of other things. And so could you, and also how those services would relate to and be needed for an entrepreneur, especially in the beginning, but at any stage in their journey. So if you could expand on that a little, that'd be great.
Yeah, sure. Thank you, David, first of all, for having me here today. It's so wonderful to see an organization like this for entrepreneurs starting out. And boy, 32 years ago when I first started doing this, there was no such organization. So I think it's just really great. When you think about hiring an accounting firm, it can be daunting. And most people think dull, pocket protectors, financial statements, tax returns, the IRS. It's very scary. But you know, the new contemporary CPA firm we do compliance work, but it's much, much more than that. We are consultants and advisors and partners, really, with a business as we take you through the life cycle of your business. And I think that when you first start looking for a firm, you do want to look for a couple things. You want someone with deep institutional knowledge of your industry. I think too many times If you start out in the wrong place with maybe a generalist might be okay in the beginning, but they're not going to help you open those doors that maybe a larger firm with all that institutional knowledge and that huge network of people that they can introduce you to, that is so valuable, because you want to concentrate on your business. You don't want to be, looking for everybody that you should be talking to. So I think, I think you need to look for someone with that institutional knowledge and chemistry and attitude. And don't underplay chemistry and attitude. When you go look for an accounting firm, if they're talking down to you or you feel like they're condescending, move along. That's not the firm for you. And I think that chemistry and attitude play a big part in all of that. My mentor many years ago taught me that to be a good partner, accountant, team player with your clients, you had to know how the cash register run. So that's what I even tell my staff today. You have to know how the cash register rings. If you don't know how they're making money, then you shouldn't be their accountant. You really, because the more you know and your accountant knows, the more value they can add. And that's what you're looking for. You're looking for the value add. I think too many times people think of either the lawyer or the accountant and those advisors as expense items on their P&L, when really, those are your valuable assets that they're there for you to use so you can navigate your business in such a way that you can grow and, really be successful. I think one of the first things you want to do, you have to see your lawyer, obviously, that's the first thing. You got to set up your entity type, well, what it is you want to do. You got to find an accountant. You do have to find a banker, because at one point you're going to need financing. And I know it's very, very hard these days for startups to find financing in banks because they don't have a huge appetite for that. So you might have to go to friends and family for that initial capital until you have that 2 or 3 years of tax returns that a bank is going to want to see, unless you have a lot of collateral. Obviously, a personal guarantee means a lot to a bank. And, in your field, we're going to know who those banks are and who those people are that you can contact and save you a lot of time. I would hire smart people around you, not the cheapest. The cheapest usually isn't the one that's going to do the best job for you. Hire smart people, including internally. If you're going to hire a bookkeeper, hire someone with the knowledge in your industry so that, things aren't a mess at the end of the year. But as you get bigger, you're going to need other things from your accounting firm. You might have to tap into private equity as you grow, and you might need other capital, needs. And a firm like Marcum has a private equity division, and we can open up all of those doors for you as well and help you with your, if you want to go public, we can help you go public. We do that kind of work too. So you want a firm that can sort of be with you every step of the way in your growth period, so that when you're ready, we're ready right along with you. I do head up, like David said, our modern family division for anyone who doesn't check the box with married, 2.5 kids and a dog, although we all have dogs these days. I swear, I take my dog for a walk and I never knew the neighborhood had this many dogs. But anyone who, second marriages, not just the LGBTQ community, but, your Brady Bunch scenario, you each have kids, adoption, all those types of things. We are very used to dealing in non-traditional families, and we can offer some advice there that you might not get in another firm because they don't devote the resources to that particular division that, you're interested in. We also have a tech division. So you talk about, technology, right? We build bots for clients. If there's a lot of transactions that, we could help you with, and we could build a bot for you in order to do some of that work, we've done that. We've saved clients millions of dollars doing that. I think that even cannabis, Illinois, we have January 1st, everything is legal here, right? And we were already ready because we have over 300 cannabis clients. Some of them are public. And I know that a lot of other firms, especially not the smaller firms, but even the big four, they don't touch them. because there's too much liability. And we have made the business decision that we think that it's worth it and people need help in this market. And we have trained our staff, and we have an entire division devoted to cannabis. So we're very nimble that way. And you want a firm that can ebb and flow as you grow your business. One piece of advice that I could give you, once you have everything in place, and this is something that I do for every single one of my clients, at the end of the year, could be in the middle of the year, but once a year, have a board meeting with all of your advisors, your lawyer, your accountant, your social media person, your insurance agent, anybody who's one of your advisors. Get them all around the table. Have drinks, bring in coffee and lunch, do whatever kind of meeting you want to have. Make sure everybody's on the same page with your vision of where you want your company to go. And I have never once been to one of these meetings when something great didn't come out of it. Somebody has a great idea. It's wonderful when your advisors are working with each other and not against each other. They shouldn't be, fighting each other for fees of yours. You want people that are there for you. You're looking for your team, right? Your football team, and you're the quarterback. So make sure that your team is in place and that everyone is on the same page in terms of where you want to go. I don't know what else I could say about, good advisors. There are great advisors out there. Just make sure that you pick a firm that can grow with you, that has some of the services. And you can go on their website, and that's great. I mean, they'll tell you everything that they can do, but interview them in person and see how you feel with them. If you feel comfortable, then that's probably the right firm for you. And so that's what I can say about, picking an accounting firm that can bring you through the life cycle of your business.
Lisa, thank you so much. I love that you use the term advisor a lot, and I think that that's a great term to use. And now it sounds like you have both just working with clients directly, but then also when you are having sort of that big board meeting at the end of the year or at certain points in time, that you come up with ideas that maybe your client didn't think of, because you came up with ideas that I didn't think of with private equity, and sort of that having the ability to have a connection or a network through a company like Marcum. So I thought that was an important thing that resonated with me, is sort of that idea of a panel of advisors. And again, somebody might not be at the stage right now where they need private equity advice, but that's a really powerful thing to think, okay, my advisor has that knowledge and has that access. So I love that. Yeah, no, thank you. So I wanted to bring AJ in now, and we're talking about advisors, and I also think Lisa touched on another point that I see a lot, which is that we don't know what we don't know until sometimes it's too late. And one of those areas I definitely think is legal, and with respect to the startup community, that a lot of times has to do with intellectual property. And I know that I'm a lawyer also, but I don't do intellectual property. I'm a litigator, and litigation is very different. I know that a lot of AJ's time is sort of split between, actually resolving issues, but also advising clients as to what they need to do to avoid those issues. Again, acting as an advisor, like Lisa was saying. And so AJ, I'd like you to tell us a little bit, if you can, about sort of what intellectual property concerns a new entrepreneur or entrepreneurs at different stages of their journey would have, and how lawyers can be a part of that and can help them, and again, to use Lisa's word, as an advisor.
No problem. Thanks for having me. I'm AJ Schumacher. I work at Foley and Lardner in Chicago. We're an international law firm with offices throughout the country, and we, I think, still brand ourselves as a one-stop shop. We do litigation, M&A deals, and intellectual property. And I do more specifically trademark and copyright work. But for those who don't know, intellectual property generally are things like trademarks, copyrights, patents, and trade secrets. the trademarks are kind of your brand names, your logos, things that consumers see and think of your brand and distinguish your product from others. Copyrights, think of as creative forms of expression. So there are, your photographs, your packaging on some of your, there's some overlap, their packaging, your web designs, your advertising and marketing materials. And then patents are things like, your processes, your kind of your know-how, they're more technical. And then trade secrets are kind of anything that is commercially sensitive and valuable. So think of things like, Coke recipes or secret sauce at McDonald's or whatever. And intellectual property is important for entrepreneurs in I think, two ways. The first is how to obtain and protect your intellectual property. We're constantly advising clients on whether they can use a brand name or a product name, and how they can stop other people from using those. And those are all things that you can do through, trademark rights. And especially at the startup phase, because we run into clients who have built a business around a particular brand or a product. And then, when you get large enough, you get bigger companies coming in telling you that they want you to change your name, and it becomes a whole ordeal, and it's expensive and time consuming. And the startups that we work with, it's helpful to make sure that you're kind of in the clear at the outset, so that you have a name and rights and trademarks that you can use and grow under. The same thing with patents, although I don't do patent work, but my firm does. It's protecting your processes and other, I don't know, it's so technical, I don't want to get into it in great detail, but they're also valuable for importing and exporting your products. So if you're making your product in China or another country, it's important to have trademark rights in those countries to then be able to utilize your products in other countries as well. And then the other reason that it's important is to avoid infringing others, as I already touched on a little bit. We see it time and again. People will, take other people's websites or photographs and put them on their own advertising for their own, purposes, or they'll take something from social media and repost it, and then they get in all sorts of trouble. And we kind of just help clients at the startup stage avoid things like that. And then we also help them, once they're big enough and want to start listing their products on Amazon, or if they want to start expanding their portfolio so that they can eventually sell their business to another bigger fish, if you will. We kind of help them through all of that stuff. So I don't know, Dave, if there's anything else in particular. I had a whole long list, but then I got, a little sidetracked.
No, that's great, AJ, and thank you so much. So, one thing I would ask, though, to just build on that is when you, when somebody comes to you and they're asking questions, they're a new startup entrepreneur, and they're sort of asking you about things they need to be concerned about and when they need to actually take the legal protections to make sure that their trademark is protected. What sort of timeline or what kind of advice do you give them with respect to that? Like, do they need an attorney while they're still in the stage where they're in their, doing it in their basement? Or is it really, like, what stages do they need to be at?
The answer is, unfortunately, it depends, as all things in the legal field, do for the most part. And it really is that simple. It's hard as a general matter to, if you're in your basement stage and you're kind of just jotting things down on your pieces of paper, it's very hard to protect any of that. The law, as a very general matter, doesn't just protect, ideas kind of. And so, for example, for the trademark phase, there are ways to reserve a name that you're intending to use with certain goods and services. And you can do that at any stage if you have the funds for it and you have legitimate interest in using the mark. But most people don't do it until they have, funds to start paying people to do it for them, or they're actually shipping products and making them and have, a legitimate infrastructure in place to launch their business. And part of the reason that is because at least U.S. trademark and copyright law protects your trademarks, and your copyrights are protected without any sort of filing. You don't need to go to the government and ask for registration in order to have rights. Your rights are based on once your copyright is created, and then your trademark rights are based for the most part on when you use the trademark. So if you have a product and you're selling them, but you don't have an application or a registration, you could at least theoretically still prevent somebody else from using that mark later on in the future, or even still get your trademark from the USPTO, the trademark office. If that makes sense.
No, and I like what you said, because that's sort of building again on sort of our theme that Lisa developed tonight, which was the group of advisors, because as you said, there's not really one set answer as to when one would need to sort of take the formalized step. But it is good to sit down with an attorney, because again, as somebody who's been a lawyer for 20 years, I know nothing about intellectual property. So if I was seeking to start a business and I had a trademark that I really wanted to protect, or a brand image of some sort, I would need to sit down with you and discuss that and how I could protect it, or even if it's something I can protect. So I think that's a great, what you're talking about is, again, we don't know what we don't know until we don't know it. So it's an important thing to make sure that people are aware of sort of these different things, and also the different concepts of the difference between a patent and a trademark. So
it all makes sense in my head. And so when I try to talk about it to other people, I'm like, what do you, I don't understand. Like,
no, I hear. Well, and that's the thing too. That's why it's nice. It's great to be an industry insider, because you do understand things and you're able to bring it to life for other people that haven't had any experience. So thank you.
One thing I will say is a snippet of advice that a lot of, I think, at the ground floor level, think registering a domain name does not give you trademark rights. So just because you have the domain doesn't mean that you're entitled to use that name. People are always like, well, I have the domain, can I use it? And it's like, not that simple.
Yeah, so no, that's great. And again, that's good advice. That's why, it's something to make sure that you are, if that's something that you're concerned about, like that's a concern of yours as a startup entrepreneur, that you have a domain or a name even that you want to protect, you really do need to contact a lawyer, because again, there's, as AJ said, it depends, and it depends on what's being protected and how you're trying to protect it and what your interest is. So thank you so much for that. So, and the AJ and Lisa both talked about areas that, unless we're part of them or been exposed to them, we really don't know that much about them. Like, we think we understand trademarks. We see the little trademark there. We think we understand accounting because we maybe took an accounting class at one point in time, but we really don't. I know I personally don't understand either of them. And one of those other areas is insurance and the need for insurance. And so I wanted to ask Darren Rodgers, and again, he has decades of experience in health insurance. And, the issue becomes, what do we need to know about insurance as a startup entrepreneur? What are the things that we need to be aware of, and sort of the issues that are at play there? So I'll pitch it over to Darren with that sort of request, if he could kind of fill us in on that area.
Well, thanks, David. As David said earlier, I'm coming to you this evening from the Florida Panhandle, where we've been dealing with Hurricane Sally for the last couple of days. And if it looks like I am shaking a little bit, I am, because my house is continuing to shake from the high winds that we're having here as the storm moves beyond us now. So at least we have power. So as I warned David earlier, my power and internet may go out, but we seem to be good for now. When you start thinking about health insurance, you really need to think of it as part of a larger employee benefit or non-current cash compensation strategy for your business. In the US, most full-time employees expect to receive health insurance from their employer. And it's the benefit that most of your potential employees will think about first, because it's the one they'll tend to use first, as opposed to something like a pension plan or a stock option plan or a 401k or other programs that you may be considering. Also, just from a technical standpoint, at some point as your business grows, you may be required to offer health insurance to your employees. We all have heard of something called the Affordable Care Act, or AKA Obamacare, which includes a mandate for employers of 50 or more full-time employees to have a health insurance program in place. And there's a lot of legal parameters around what that plan must look like and who must be covered and what the contributions must be. Some people that I talked to in 2017, we got rid of something called the individual mandate, which required individuals to carry health insurance. But from an employer perspective, the employer mandate is still there. For purposes of this call, I'm assuming that everyone here is a small employer, which the IRS defines as for employers of less than 50 employees. So I'm going to kind of talk about things for smaller employers from that perspective, but let me know if that's not the case. As you start your business and you begin to attract and retain employees, you should definitely spend some time thinking about from where your employees might come, and after you spend a lot of time hiring them and training them, where they might be tempted to go to some other employer. And then you want to plan your employee benefit strategy kind of with that in mind, where people might come from and where they might end up going at some point. For example, if you start your company and you're planning on hiring a bunch of really smart people from Google, you're going to need to have a very rich employee benefit strategy to attract and retain those people. If on the other hand, you are operating kind of a commission-driven sales force, that I'm going to say real estate firms and those kinds of firms tend to have much leaner employee benefit types of strategies. So it depends on what your business is that when you're developing your strategy. Regardless, I would say, and this is a question I get a lot, is as an entrepreneur, you need to budget a minimum of about $600 per employee per month for a health insurance program. That's kind of a national average. I think many people here in Chicago, it's going to be probably more if you're in downtown Chicago versus some rural places, but generally speaking, about $600 per person per month. And as you begin to establish a plan, you want to be able to answer 4 key questions. Number one, where are you going to purchase this health insurance plan, or how? What type of plan are you going to purchase? What additional types of insurance you want to put with it, like dental or disability or life insurance? And then how much of the premium are you as an employer going to cover for the employees, and maybe even the dependents, the children, spouses, domestic partners, whatever that may be. For small employers, again, I'm assuming most of the folks in the call are small employers. If I were you, the first option I would explore to purchasing health insurance is talk to your payroll provider, because your payroll provider already has the data for your employees. They know when your employees are hired, when they're fired, and it'll allow you to manage things in one system. Your payroll employer may also offer COBRA continuation services for people who leave your company, but you need to continue them on the health insurance for legal reasons. If you need a second option beyond your payroll provider would be, if you feel you need more expertise than your payroll provider can provide or more options, you can talk to a traditional insurance broker. There's lots of them out there. Everybody's brother-in-law is an insurance broker sometimes, it seems. It's best to get a referral from someone that you know, rather than just picking up the phone book or searching through the internet. I would be sure to check references as well before you commit to working with any particular insurance broker, and before you sign anything. It's typical that insurance brokers will want you to sign something called a broker of record agreement. Do not sign that until you're absolutely confident that you want to work with that person. There are also, I should mention, several online brokers these days, some companies called eHealth Insurance or benefitmall.com, for people who want to do kind of more of their own shopping, so to speak. You'll notice I didn't say when you want to purchase health insurance to call up a health insurance company. And that's because most health plans are really not set up to sell directly to small employers for a variety of administrative and channel conflict reasons. For a time, also small employers had the option of going to the exchanges that were created by the Affordable Care Act, aka Obamacare. For employers, these were called Small Business Health Options Programs or SHOP programs. Most of those have fallen by the wayside. The Illinois option, it no longer exists. I think there's only about 10 or 11 states in the country that still offer SHOP programs for employers. That's not really a resource anymore. regardless of how you decide to purchase insurance, the price that you pay, which is, it's a very price sensitive business, the price that you pay should not vary for the exact same plan from the exact same company, regardless of the channel you select. There are legal reasons for that, but if you're, I'll say it again, if you're talking about the exact same plan from the exact same company, there is no reason that you can choose any channel that you want, and the price has to be legally the same and constructed the same. When you're seeking now, then you've decided you develop your employee benefit strategy, you've decided how you're going to pursue shopping for the plan. There are really things that I call the ABCs that you want to consider when you're selecting your health plan. A stands for area. And by that I mean, are all of your employees in one location, or are they spread out over several states? And you want to make sure that the health plan you select can cover your employees where they are. So most benefit plans include some type of provider network, a PPO program or an HMO program or whatever. If you have people in different locations, you want to make sure that the plan can meet everyone's needs regardless of where they are. The B is for the benefit level. The Affordable Care Act sought to standardize benefit levels across many health insurance options to make it easier for purchasers to comparison shop. I'm not sure that was achieved, but that's kind of an editorial comment, so I won't go further there. But when you're purchasing a plan, you will see these benefit levels that are color coded. They'll talk about bronze, silver, gold, or platinum, which correspond to a particular actuarial value level, 60, 70, 80, or 90% respectively. And without going into a whole lot of detail on them, the plans that are at the same metal level are roughly equivalent in terms of the overall coverage level. Doesn't mean the benefits are exactly the same. They won't be from company to company, but they're roughly equivalent overall. If you're comparing a gold plan from company A and a gold plan from company B, from an actuarial value perspective, they should be the same. And then the final ABC, the C, is cost. Health insurers typically offer many plans, multiples of plans at each metal level, and the plans will have different cost sharing features within them, which can impact the monthly premium. And it's important, if you're looking at plans at a certain metal level, you only compare plans to other plans at that same metal level, or otherwise your cost comparisons are not adequate. And then, as I said, besides health insurance, many employers offer things like dental insurance or vision insurance or life insurance or disability. And that's something that you want to consider. Those are much less costly than health insurance, particularly life insurance. Life insurance is very cheap. But if you have a younger workforce, which might be the case with this call, they're going to tend to value things like dental insurance and vision insurance much more so than if you have an older workforce, which is going to value things like life insurance and disability insurance, because they're thinking about just at the stage of life that they are. Most employers, even small employers, are going to cover 100% of employee premiums. That's going back to that $600 average cost that I said earlier. So you want to plan on being able to cover and budget for 100% of that. Most insurance companies have minimum contribution levels that the employer has to pay. That generally speaking, the minimum is about 75% of the cost of the employee health insurance minimally that you can get away with purchasing. And then some employers will even offer that same 75% or more for covering dependents as well. Some employers choose to cover like a flat percentage, 75% of the employee cost and the dependent cost. But I'll stop there. I've said a lot, and we'll wait for any further questions that the group might have.
No, that was so great. Thank you so much for that. That was really informative because, again, that is an area that people really don't know much about unless they have an advisor that they can talk to, or they've spoken with somebody in insurance. And you brought up a really interesting point, which is, the different generations. We have workforce and we have the different ages of a company, or the, like somebody that's at the beginning of a startup journey versus, whether or not they have employees, a couple of employees even, but that they're an employer at that point in time and they need to be concerned about insurance and what different generations would be looking to and what they'd want from insurance. And I feel like that generational question is something that's really important for all industries and, you know, for all companies. And one area where I see that generational difference a lot is with respect to marketing and social media and branding. Because I will tell you what appeals to me and what I think about, just like with insurance, what I'd be thinking about is, I'm old, so I'd be thinking about life insurance. But the younger people would be thinking about something different. And with social media, just the ability and the understanding of how it works and how branding works is so different now than when I was in my 20s. So with that, I want to bring it Darien in to talk a little bit about social media and branding and the type of work his company does. And he has a guide that I'm going to put in the chat. I put everybody's contact information, all of our speakers' contact information in the chat. So please feel free to go to their web pages and LinkedIn and look at that. But Darien, I'm going to put a social media guide that he has. But I want to ask him to sort of tell us a little bit about that. And again, make sure that you use the terms and explain them for us, because as you know, there's a couple terms with respect to search engines and things that I had no idea what they were before we were planning for this. Oh, you're on mute. You're on mute.
Wow, the young person should be good at technology, right? That's like how that should go. Thank you so much, David, for having me on this panel. You know, one of the things I love about marketing and what we do is that it's such a broad field. I think nowadays it seems like there's a new social media channel coming out every single day. There's a different trending topic. And, you know, everything that's happening in the marketing world is go, 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 go. But really what it comes down to, I think what entrepreneurs and startups really need to be concerned with is creating a great brand and outlining exactly what that brand is. So, you know, if you don't have a brand guide, that word doesn't make any sense to you, I would immediately start tomorrow with putting one together. Your brand is your logo, but your brand is also how you talk to people. It's the photos you use, it's the colors, it's the whole look and feel of, you know, the digital environment of what your business is. You know, so most brand guides, when you come to a firm like mine or talk to a graphic designer, if they really are a professional, they're going to not just develop a logo for you. They're going to put a logo together. They're going to talk about what fonts you should use with that logo. They're going to talk about how you should speak. You know, we are a very young firm. I use curse words in emails sometimes. David, I'm sure you've seen some and they're like, what's Darien talking about? But I know that we're going after startup businesses that happen to have a younger like demographic of owners. You know, if you're a more established person or you're working in healthcare, think about that. Like most of your potential clients are going to be a little older. So maybe they're not going to understand that Lizzo reference, or maybe they're not going to get, you know, why they should like slide into your DMs, right? So think about where your customer base is as you're developing these guidelines, and really use them as an overall set of rules for your website. Do something, you should also be setting on your brand guidelines, because the last thing you want is to show up somewhere and look at your logo and it's really distorted. It doesn't look like you want it to look, and it just doesn't make anybody happy. After you've kind of developed that brand, you have to really think about what marketing strategies you want to use that are going to make your business successful. I think nowadays everybody has a website, mandatory one, but what that website is, thinking about how it's designed. So making sure that it's mobile friendly. Most people who are looking at websites are looking at them on the phone. They're not actually using their desktop. I think it's something like 75% of traffic to our website via mobile. So thinking about how to design a web page in a way that makes people want to interact with it, and it's easy on that little screen, but also looks really beautiful on that big screen. Obviously, you should be showcasing your brand, talking to people that work there, the work you've done, and you know what your own philosophy is in your industry and what sets you apart. The biggest part of the website is SEO, search engine optimization. It's making sure that your website's optimized to be listed on Google, Yahoo, and all the other search engines. So really, and that comes down to developing a really effective keyword strategy. The words that people type in. So for example, we work with a lot of elderly care, or home health care. And well, home health care is a great idea for a keyword, but it's really broad. And so when you're thinking about developing this keyword strategy, you want to think about keywords that you can reasonably rank for that aren't that competitive. You know, I think about us going up against Leo Burnett as a marketing agency. Their SEO is always going to rank higher than ours just because they have 20 years more experience being in the digital space, right? After you develop your website, I think the most important form of marketing for anybody to do is social media. It's free and your competitors are on it and everyone else in America is on it. So if you're not on it, you're really doing your brand and your business a disservice. But social media within itself is so broad, right? We have TikTok, Facebook, YouTube, Pinterest, Twitter, Instagram, that list goes on, right? And I think that what brands need to do is really pick two that they think they're going to be phenomenal at. So if you're a clothing retailer, Instagram is great for you. If you're in B2B sales, LinkedIn is where you need to be. So think about where your customer base is and where they're kind of naturally congregating and build your social media strategy around that. So the way to build that strategy is thinking about social media as this very scientific thing. Yes, it's a lot of pretty pictures and really cool videos, and making sure that your content is engaging is a really important part of that, but also making sure that your content's optimized to the algorithm and that you're putting it out at times that are relevant. So, you know, I was looking at social media the other day and I saw a chiropractor talk about their free appointments at like 1 a.m. And that didn't make any sense to me because no one's really looking for that at 1 a.m. in the morning. You know, nobody's on social media at that time. And I think that as business owners, sometimes we do things when they're convenient for us, but it's not necessarily the best time for your brand. But there are a ton of different platforms and tools that you can use to help automate that for you. Buffer's a really great one. We also have a proprietary program at DM Burton that we use for all of our clients. I think it's pretty great. But, you know, find a way to make that automated and make it easier, and so that timing becomes easier for you. In regards to content, you know, think about what your audience likes. You know, everything I'm going to say goes back to what that audience likes and how they interact. So if it's mostly moms who have kids and they're between the ages of 30 and 45, what you put on your social media feed is going to be drastically different if you're going after guys who are between the ages of 23 and 40. And I think what brands sometimes do is they try to go after everybody, but you can't. You really have to pick that niche and double down on it. I think somebody that's a really great example of this in the startup world is Dude Wipes. They're like wipes for dudes, which seems like a really basic concept, but they really, really do a good job of making poop jokes, you know, talking about things that like guys who are between the ages of 18 and like 30 are really gonna get, or at least I like them, right? So I think that, you know, thinking about what your audience wants, when they're gonna be more likely to be engaged with that content, and what that engaging content looks like. You know, I think AJ made a really great point earlier. You can't just take things from other people's social media feeds, right? It happens all the time though, really unfortunately. And, you know, if you aren't great at creating that content, find somebody to create that content for you, right? Like, it's taking a photo and adding your logo to it maybe jazzing it up a little bit. I really like to do a background outlay and make the photo look a little darker because that's kind of our brand. But you know, if you can't do that and you don't have that creative capacity, then find somebody else, right? We've talked about advisors. Your marketing person is also your advisor. We're telling you what direction your business is going to go in. We're helping you solve like who your clients are going to be and how are you going to get those clients to come to you. You know, obviously there's a whole host of, I think, other things in the marketing realm. Email marketing obviously is really big. PPC and Google AdWords, spending money to be at the top of Google's pages. You know, even Facebook advertising. I think those are all really great strategies, but I think they all cost money. And I remember, like, we're still a startup, we're still in the young ages of our business. And like, it's hard for me to spend that money sometimes, which is why I think that what entrepreneurs also need to realize is that marketing is so much more than what you're doing in the digital world. It's, you know, I say I run a business that services a lot of businesses in our community. So if I go to the grocery store, like I can't be wearing like really, really baggy like sweatpants and like a stained t-shirt, right? That doesn't reflect my brand well. People see me, they're like, oh, don't want that. But think about small things like that. Think about how to leverage your community and the people that you know and the connections that you have, because you're going to be your best marketer. And those are the people that are primed for your message because they're your friends and they like you. And people just want to buy things from their friends.
That's a great point. Thank you so much. I know we've been going for a while, but I did want to ask one last question, and I'm going to stick with you, Darien, and then we'll go sort of round the back way to finish up, and then we'll take some questions from the audience because we've been getting some in. But Darien, what would you say is the one mistake that you've really seen startup entrepreneurs make that you'd say, you know, if there was one takeaway, you're like, make sure this is the pitfall to avoid, what would you say that you've seen?
I think that sometimes entrepreneurs and, you know, people who have investors, maybe startup capital, they like to dump a ton of money into advertising and they don't take time to do the research or make sure it's measurable. And, you know, I think that one of the biggest things that your marketer is going to do for you is pull the real metrics and talk about, so if somebody sees this social media post, what does that mean when they're going to your website? And if they're going to your website, what's the goal of your website? Is it for them to click this button? I don't think that people really think about that strategy. They're kind of like, oh, I just want to put my name out there because that's what I need. But if you don't do it in a way that's scalable, in a way that works for your business and is actually going to produce you data, it's not really that helpful for you. Yeah, you get a couple leads, but you don't really have a way to create a plan that can grow your business 5, 10, 20 years.
Oh, that's great. Thank you so much. That's really helpful. So now I'm going to go to Darren. I know you work consulting now with a lot of startup companies. And what would you say is the one issue or mistake that you've seen your companies you've worked with at any point in your career make that would be your one takeaway from tonight, that you'd be like, this is what to avoid?
Well, yeah, I for the last couple of years, I've been advising several tech startups that really are seeking to work with health insurance companies. I'll say that. So they have sort of an audience they're going after. But I would say one thing that they tend to not do is, in my opinion, think long-term enough. What I mean by that is health insurance is a mature business. You don't have a lot of new companies getting into health insurance. So the companies they're going to sell to want to know that those entities have a budget that allows them the financial capital to stay, you know, to deliver their commitments that they're selling to these companies, and that they're going to be around for a few years. And that actually sometimes conflicts with these tech startups who are almost immediately thinking about their exit strategies of I'm going to sell myself to Google in the next 5 years or something. That's not what a potential client that's a health insurer wants to hear from those companies. So I have to try to bring them into the world of reality and say, you can't go into that meeting and say that you're thinking about your exit strategy in 3 years. You have to talk more about your longevity and how you plan on being able to deliver for your clients 3 to 5 years down the road.
That's excellent. Now, that's not something I would have thought of at all. So I appreciate that. That's a really good advice. Thank you. I'm going to ask AJ the same question. Is as far as when people come to you that are sort of starting up where you're helping them where they are maybe have already made a mistake. What's one of those mistakes that you've seen that you can share with us so people can avoid doing it themselves?
At least, so my specialty is trademark law. So in that realm, I think the biggest mistake is that people don't think about it early enough, and they are trying to deal with it after the fact. And trademarks can be used in a very broad way to kind of, if you think about it like a yard, it's like to fence off your yard and keep other people out of it. And there are a whole different ways that you can do that. And people don't really they don't think about it until it's kind of too late and somebody already has the same mark in, China or even the US, and then it becomes a problem for them and their business, and it's disruptive, and you have to spend a lot more money to fix it, kind of. And the other one that we see kind of a lot, in our opinion anyway, is that they hire the wrong people to do their work for them. Trademarks is to do it on any real level is very specialized, and there's a lot of nuance, and I can kind of tell, after a couple of minutes of talking to somebody, whether they actually practice trademark law or if they just like dabble in it. And some of the clients don't want to spend a ton of money on it at the beginning until it's too late, and then we have to come in and kind of dig them out of a hole that somebody else got them in. And it's just easier to avoid doing it at the beginning. So I kind of take the approach that if you can afford it and you're serious about it, it's better to just pay the fees and the expense up front than have to deal with it down the road when it's more a bigger issue for you.
Well, I think that's great advice, and I would my advice, for what it's worth, is that to take AJ's advice and sort of what everybody else has sort of given as advice this evening is make sure that you have that panel of advisors. And all of the people that are on this panel are people that if you thought you needed an accountant or an intellectual property attorney or somebody to help you with your branding and social media or somebody to help you with your insurance needs, you could contact them and they would tell you if there wasn't the right time. And that's not going to, that 2-minute phone call of here's my issue, can I meet with you, likely will not cost money. If there's a meeting, that's something that, they would discuss. So it's a great opportunity to make sure that, if you really think, am I digging myself into a hole in this area or not, to use AJ's term, it's a really important thing to pick up the phone or send an email and see if that's something that you can get some help with. So I'm going to ask Lisa the question, and then we'll go to my, because we're running a little over, go to the audience questions. But Lisa, what would be your one thing that you've seen people make their mistake with?
I'm going to piggyback on what AJ said. The biggest mistake I see is hiring the wrong person to begin with, because it takes a lot more money to undo someone else's mistake than it does by hiring the right person to begin with. So I think that, investing in your advisors at the beginning and consider them your partners and that you're on this journey together. We talked about fees and not being able to afford maybe some of them. Sometimes you can't afford not to have the right person in your corner, because in the long run, you'll save money and you'll save a lot of headaches.
No, that's great advice. And I mean, the one thing that I always tell people when I'm talking about why I like working with startup companies is that they love the company so much. They love this product that they have created. And so that it's like a child, in a lot of ways. So that's the investment is real. You don't want to, as AJ said, dig yourself into a hole. So thank you for that. And Lisa, this question might be something that that we got from the audience that would be for you. Is there's a question about succession planning and exit strategy, and that's sort of building on what Darren was saying, because I know a lot of startups, their goal is to really build something big and profitable and sell it. So is there any advice with sort of the planning for exit strategy and succession planning that you would have?
My advice would be to start earlier than you think you would need to when it comes to succession planning. So I do a lot of closely held family businesses, which is generational. And it's there's many generations, sometimes even right now, there's 3 generations in the same business. And it's hard because maybe the kids aren't as interested, or they don't know the business as well. And they didn't learn it from the ground up like their parents did. And now you're going to make them the president and the vice president. And now the employees are going to resent them for it. There's a way to go about doing it the right way if you have a closely held business, and making sure that you put in place the right people in the right positions and bring them on board sooner rather than later, so that you can start building those relationships.
No, that's great. Thank you. Did anybody else have anything that they, with respect to exit or succession planning, that they have experienced in their area? I know that's more of a financial question. Okay. Darren, I had a question for you from the audience. For entrepreneurs that have always worked for large companies before with good benefits, how do you recommend they get their health coverage for themselves as they start their new company with a couple of other founders? And I know that's a big question.
Yeah, and I typed a question or a response back to the person that sent the question. Hopefully it went through, but just so everybody heard, my answer was, assuming that all the founders are employees of the company and are planned to be for the foreseeable future, like they're actually going to work for the company that you've started, purchase a small employer health plan, because even for 3 people, it's tax deductible 100% for both federal and state taxes. And you can even get a tax credit for the first couple of years of the plan that's available through the Affordable Care Act.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Well, those were our 2 questions. So if anybody else has any questions, please feel free to put them in the chat or the Q&A. But otherwise, we're over a little bit, so I will let everybody get back to their evening if we have no additional questions. But I wanted to thank Lisa, AJ, Darren, and Darien so much for their insight tonight. This was really a great program. I learned a lot, so I'm sure other people did. Although Darien, I know that I'm not going to remember all those things about the search engines and stuff like that, but I appreciate you sharing with us. So yeah, thank you all so much. We're getting a lot of in the chat. Great program. Thank you. So thanks everybody. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Excellent. Thanks. Have a great evening, everybody.
Thanks, Dave.
Thanks.